This video is brought to you by TS4U IT Engineering Bootcamp.
So the first question we are about of course, we in the company we are using the multiple CI/CD the tools. Some of the tools we use the AWS CI/CD tools. Some of the teams use the GitLab CI. Some of in the team is trying to convince their management to use the GitHub CI/CD as well. And of course, we have many old applications that we have started using the Jenkins. So I would like to actually start with the Jenkins experience, then go from there. So what are your experience using Jenkins build or the CI/CD? What have you done?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. Actually, like CI/CD is my favorite topic, like always has been. So in my career, I basically worked with the CI/CD tools and the various pipeline tools as a release engineer. So as a DevOps engineer, my core part was release and deployment. So I basically worked with multiple CI/CD tools in my life. So Jenkins was very special part in my role, because in my previous companies, they were using some legacy applications and mostly they were on-prem. So basically we had to use some versatile tools like Jenkins that we can self-manage and that we can just integrate in any virtual machine. And okay, we just now have a CI/CD tool without any third-party dependency. So yeah, for us, Jenkins was very easy to use because we had some Ansible-based systems that were actually automating all of our VMs, and we were using the GitOps procedures to actually run down the virtual machines, like hundreds of virtual machines, and we were configuring those virtual machines with the Ansible as well. And since we were using the GitOps process, we are always using Jenkins to run the Ansible playbooks, right? So that's why Jenkins was always used as our GitOps tool as well, not just the release and deployment. And obviously for our applications, we had Python-based applications, we had Java-based applications that were built on Spring Boot framework. So we basically had to deploy all of them with the CI/CD in our dev and staging cluster with the Jenkins. Okay, so basically in the Jenkins, we had a lot of Jenkins workers, because for the Python-based apps, we basically had a bunch of workers so that only the Python jobs will run on those specific workers. We had workers for Java-based applications where all the Java-related tools like Ant and Maven were installed, and then we were running jobs and building artifacts on those specific workers for Jenkins. And we basically version controlled all of our applications with the Jenkins as well, because Jenkins have a build number tag that every time you run a build, it will basically start a new job with a new number, right? Let's say you have now build number 11, on the next build, it will be build number 12. So it actually helped us to version control our system very well as well, because every time we build a new artifact, we give it a new number so that we can track and roll back if necessary in our deployments. Okay, and our automated testing pipelines were also in the Jenkins. So our developers wrote some Cypress tests, like the UI tests, and all of their unit tests also were running in the Jenkins. So we basically had multiple stages in our Jenkins pipeline, where the first stage, we cloned the code from the Git. We had GitLab and GitHub both. So we actually didn't use any of those integrated CI/CD pipelines. We basically used Jenkins as a single source of pipeline for all of our applications. So basically the first stage, we clone the source code, and on the second stage, we basically install the dependencies and any of the configurations we need to do. We basically do that, and the next step, we do the unit testing, and in the fourth step, we build the artifact, and then we basically deploy it. We have a deploy job, and after the deployment, we got a UI testing job, which is basically running by Selenium. So we run that as a post-deployment pipeline stage. So we basically had a 5-stage job for like most of our applications with Jenkins. So yeah, after the build actually is done, we basically have a notification alert with our Slack group, so that every time a build is successful, it basically sends us a Slack notification that, okay, your build is successful or your build is failed, so that we don't have to go to Jenkins every time to check that, okay, if our build was successful or not. And then basically for our production deployments, obviously some of the production deployments were with Jenkins. And since these were production deployments, we didn't actually do the fully automated CI/CD for that, because for the production deployments, we basically needed to have an approval system. Okay, so for the Jenkins, before just deploying to production, we had to have a manual override button that, okay, every time your build is successful, now it just needs to be deployed. So before the deployment stage, we basically had a prompt that, okay, do you want to deploy? And then we call it the manual overriding, or like manual push to the deployment. So whenever you approve the changes, and then it will only run the like deploy job, otherwise it won't run, so that we can be there in when the deployment is actually running, so that if anything goes wrong, we can just immediately roll back our deployment. Yep. So basically these are all the things that we did with the Jenkins